All right, let's dive right in. We're tackling a question that trips up millions of people in the gig economy. Can a huge contract offer, one that looks like a massive raise, actually be a pay cut in disguise? We're about to break down the surprising and honestly pretty shocking math behind being a 1099 contractor.
So picture this. You've got a choice to make. On one side, you have your steady, full-time W-2 job pulling in $68,000 a year. On the other side, you get an offer for a 1099 contract, doing the exact same work, but for $92,000. I mean, that's a $24,000 difference. It's a 35% raise. Seems like a total no-brainer, right?
But which one is the better deal? The answer, as you've probably guessed, is not nearly as simple as it looks. We're going to follow the story of a guy named Daniel who faced this exact choice. And you know what? He jumped on that contract offer thinking he'd hit the jackpot. But just 6 months later, he realized he'd walked straight into a trap. To really get what happened to Daniel, we have to look at something we're calling the Great Extraction. This is all about uncovering those hidden costs, those extra taxes, and the lost benefits that just get quietly siphoned away from a contractor's paycheck. All the stuff an employer would normally cover for you. Okay, so the first and, frankly, the biggest hit comes from something called the self-employment tax. This is the one that catches pretty much everyone off guard. See, as a contractor, you're now on the hook for paying the full share of Social Security and Medicare taxes all by yourself. And the impact is immediate, and it is huge. Of that shiny $24,000 raise Daniel thought he was getting, bam, almost $9,000 just vanishes right off the top. And that's before he's paid a single dime in federal or state income tax. Just like that, a huge chunk of his raise is already gone. So here's the math on why that happens. It's all about something called FICA taxes, for Social Security and Medicare. When you're a W-2 employee, you split the bill with your boss. You each pay 7.65%. But when you're a 1099 contractor, guess what? You're your own boss, so you have to pay both halves, the full 15.3%. For Daniel, that meant his tax bill for this stuff jumped from about $5,200 to over $14,000 a year. That extra $8,874, that's our first extraction. All right, next up is what we call the benefits void. All those perks like health insurance, retirement matching, paid vacations, they don't just disappear when you become a contractor. Nope, the financial burden of replacing every single one of them shifts entirely onto your shoulders. And this chart just lays it all out, plain and simple. As a W-2 employee, Daniel's out-of-pocket costs for his benefits were around $5,700 a year. But to get something similar as a contractor, his annual cost skyrockets to over $17,500. It's a massive jump. Let's break down how that happens. So here's how it all adds up. First, his health insurance bill nearly doubles. Then there's that free money from his old company's 401k match. That's over $2,700 a year he now has to put in himself just to stay even. And paid time off? That's not a thing anymore. If he takes those same 25 days off, it's not a vacation. It's almost $9,000 in lost income, because if you're not working, you're not getting paid. And that brings us to the third extraction, the cost of just doing business. You have to realize that as a contractor, you're not an employee anymore. You are a small business, and businesses have overhead. All those things your old company just gave you, your laptop, software, insurance, well, they're on your tab now. And just take a look at these costs. Software licenses, liability insurance, maybe an accountant. It all adds up to thousands. But the real killer here is that last line, unpaid admin time. Daniel's now spending 6 hours every single week on stuff his employer used to handle. Things like invoicing, bookkeeping, chasing down payments. At his new hourly rate, that's almost $14,000 a year in time that he's working, but not actually getting paid for. So after we add up all these extractions, the extra taxes, the lost benefits, the business overhead, what does Daniel's amazing $92,000 contract really look like? Okay, let's run the final numbers and get the verdict. After all those hidden costs are subtracted from his $92,000 contract, Daniel's real effective annual income is just $53,553. Just let that sink in for a second. That is what's left of his supposed 35% raise. And here it is, the final, absolutely brutal comparison. In his old W-2 job, Daniel made $68,000 for about a 42-hour work week. As a 1099 contractor, he is now earning almost $15,000 less while working 13 more hours every single week. He's working harder,
for less money, and with zero stability. So you have to ask, why would a company do this? Well, it's pretty simple. By switching Daniel's job to a 1099 contract, they just shifted over $20,000 of their costs directly onto him. And even after paying him that higher rate, they still came out ahead, saving over $1,600. This isn't about empowering workers. It's a cost-shifting strategy, plain and simple.
Now, look, the point of all this isn't to say that all contract work is bad. Not at all. It's to arm you with the knowledge so you don't fall into the same trap Daniel did. So let's switch gears. Let's get to the playbook and figure out how you can calculate the rate you actually deserve.
Step 1, you have to figure out what your W-2 job is truly worth. And spoiler, it's not just your salary. You have to add in the value of all your benefits, the health insurance your company pays for, the 401k match, your paid time off, plus the payroll taxes they pay on your behalf. A really good rule of thumb is that your total compensation is about 1.3 times whatever your base salary is. Okay, once you have that true compensation number, then you can set your 1099 rate. You start by multiplying that number by at least 1.4, maybe 1.5. That covers all these new costs and the risk we've been talking about. That gets you to your break-even point. But you're not done. Then you add a profit margin, 20, 30%. Because remember, you're a business now. That final number is the rate you should be asking for. Now, let's just apply this back to Daniel's situation. His $68,000 W-2 job was actually worth about $88,400 in total compensation when you add everything in. To just break even as a contractor, he should have been asking for a rate of at least $123,000. He accepted $92,000. That's more than $30,000 less than what he needed just to maintain his old standard of living. And this really brings us to the core takeaway here. When a company wants to convert your role to a 1099 contract without a massive pay increase, you are not being empowered as some new entrepreneur. You are being used as a cost reduction strategy for your employer. So the final question is for you, especially if you're a contractor listening right now. Take a hard look at your rate. Look at the math we just went through. Does your contract really account for all the costs and all the risks you've taken on? Or are you, maybe like Daniel, part of the great extraction?